Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and mysterious space hallucinations. I'm Noah Hook, and today we're looking at Event Horizon. This 1997 sci-fi horror film follows a deep space rescue team as they search a long-lost ship called the Event Horizon. The crew slowly starts to hallucinate, ranging from visions of their family to eternal torture. It all revolves around the Event Horizon's new space-bending transportation system, and the crew struggles to figure out where the hell this ship has been before they find themselves trapped there forever. Event Horizon was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, who has brought us films like Mortal Kombat, Resident Evil, and Death Race. Event Horizon was only his third film, which he chose hoping to move away from PG-13 movies like Mortal Kombat. Paramount sent him the script written by Sweet Girl's Philip Eisner. The original script dealt heavily with extraterrestrials, and Anderson wanted to switch it up, so he turned it more into a ghost story in space, more like The Shining or the Amityville Horror, to allow for more ambiguity. The film landed an all-star cast, including Sam Neill from Jurassic Park, Peaky Blinders, and In the Mouth of Madness as Dr. Weir, Lawrence Fishburne from Boys in the Hood, The Matrix, and Predators as Captain Miller, Kathleen Quinlan from Apollo 13, Breakdown, and The Hills Have Eyes remake as medical technician Peters, and Jolie Richardson from The Patriot, Nip Tuck, and Color Out of Space as Lieutenant Stark. Cinematography was handled by Adrian Biddle, who has also shot Aliens, Thelma and Louise, and The Mummy. The score was collaborated on by composer Michael Kamen and the electronic music group Orbital. Event Horizon had famously troubled production. Filming itself was a bit rushed, but the biggest issues came in post. Major motion pictures usually have 10 weeks to edit, but with the pressure of Titanic coming out soon, combined with a bunch of second unit shooting they still had to do, Anderson only had 4 weeks to cobble together a rough cut. This cut was well over 2 hours, and producers and test audiences were shocked by how gruesome the movie really was. Anderson was forced to cut the movie down and remove a lot of gore, and he says too much was taken out by the end. He wanted to eventually make a finished director's cut, but sadly most of the deleted footage was lost, damaged, or shot on too low of quality to reasonably put it back into the film. Event Horizon had a $60 million budget but only made $42 million back at the box office, making it a pretty big flop. It wasn't loved by critics either, who thought it was more style than substance. It wasn't as thought-provoking as it thought it was, and it relied way too much on horror cliches. It currently has a 28 and a 61% on Rotten Tomatoes, so there's a pretty big divide between critics and general audiences. I have never seen Event Horizon before, and while it seems like it's gonna have some weak points, it generally sounds like a movie that's right up my alley. Big thank you to my patron Jason for requesting Event Horizon for me to review. I'm very excited to see how I like it. I hope y'all have always wanted to see the guy from Jurassic Park as a Cenobite, because we're watching Event Horizon. The movie opens in space, with a very Paul W.S. Anderson opening credits sequence. We get a brief timeline explaining our conquest of the Moon in 2015, the Mars in 2032, and in 2040, a ship called Event Horizon was sent to explore the boundaries of the solar system, but she disappeared somewhere beyond Neptune. Now we jump to 2047, where the Event Horizon seems to have returned, and one of its passengers isn't too happy. That was maybe just dreamt by Dr. Weir, who misses his wifey. After freshening up, we get a better look at the station he's aboard, and he's told to report to the Lewis and Clark, a search and rescue vessel. Here we meet Pilot Smith, Lieutenant Stark, Engineer Justin, and Captain Miller. Smith and Stark are annoyed they have to go all the way out to Neptune, but orders are orders. As they prep for takeoff, we also meet Technician Cooper, Medical Technician Peters, and Dr. DJ, who preps Dr. Weir for the gravity tanks they must be in during their trip. We jump ahead 56 days into their trip as Dr. Weir wakes inside the tank when he hears a voice whisper his name. He releases himself and he follows the voice as it describes how lonely and cold it is, and the door seems to open on its own. He finds his wife Claire in the captain's seat. Oh shit, Claire ain't got no eyes. Ware wakes up in his tank for real this time, Peters and DJ help him up, and Miller rushes everyone to their stations. Peters watches videos of her son's birthday party, and we learn she was supposed to be there but had to join this trip last minute. They are about 2 hours away from Neptune, and everyone makes their introductions to Dr. Weir. We learn all of the crew was forced to come out last minute for this trip, Rescue missions this far out are extremely dangerous and none of them want to be there. Weir cuts to the chase, explaining that the US Space Command intercepted a distress signal orbiting Neptune, and that signal belongs to the Event Horizon. The crew members think it's all bullshit, but Weir explains that the public explanation that the ship simply blew up was a lie. He says it was all a top secret project with the goal being a ship capable of traveling faster than light. The crew argues that travel faster than light is impossible, but Weir says the Event Horizon is actually able to create dimensional gateways, allowing it to travel great distances instantly. The crew doesn't quite follow all his science mumbo jumbo, so using a pinup model, he explains that the ship basically bends space, hops out where it needs to, and the space returns back to normal. The method is called a gravity drive, and Dr. Weir is the one who built the ship. The Event Horizon's trip was going as planned, but as they prepared to use the gravity drive to jump to Proxima Centauri, they simply vanished. The ship is suddenly back, and their job is to find out where it's been. They've been unable to confirm life on the ship, but Weir plays the distress signal they picked up. Well, that's not good. Space Command filtered the signal and managed to find what sounds like human speech, and DJ recognizes the language as Latin. He translates the single sentence which says, "Save me." They reach the Event Horizon and make the treacherous drop down into Neptune's orbit, nearly slamming right into the ship. Oh, it's a big ship. They locate the main airlock and clamp themselves on to ensure a good hold. Stark can tell the ship still has pressure, but no gravity or heating, meaning the crew could have only survived if they were in stasis. She's picking up life all over the ship, but is unable to locate specific life forms. That means they have to hop aboard. How inconvenient. Weir insists he joins them, but Miller makes it clear he is to stay on the Clark until the Event Horizon is secured. Justin, Peters, and Miller suit up and float their way over, and they're able to open the airlock and get on board. The ship is in a deep freeze, and Weir explains they are in the central corridor which connects the personnel areas to engineering. Miller sends Justin to check out engineering while he and Peters head to the front of the ship. They spot some explosives which were apparently set up to blow the ship in half during an emergency, which somehow turns those sections into lifeboats. They reach the medical wing, which looks like it's never been used. Miller gets spooked by a severed hand, and Justin passes through a very excessive hallway. Peters finds blood in the bridge, but doesn't notice some weird meaty stuff growing on the walls. She retrieves the ship's log, which of course is a super advanced DVD, before she is spooked by a scarred, eyeless corpse. They assume the damage was caused by a pressure change, but DJ says it looks more like something an animal would do. Justin's life finder picks up strange readings, and he manages to turn the power on, unveiling the gravity drive, which is what allows them to bend space. The drive stops spinning and Justin's signal goes out, but Stark says the life scan is going crazy. The drive lights up and turns into a liquid, and as Justin dips his hand inside, he is pulled in. They lock Justin's security cable, and the ship freaks out and sends a shockwave, fucking up Miller and everyone on the Lewis and Clark. The pressure lock has been breached on board, meaning they need to evacuate onto the Event Horizon. Cooper makes his way to Justin, who the gravity drive spits back out into his arms. Peters gets the heating and gravity back up, causing that frozen body to shatter. Everyone is on the Event Horizon now, and while most essential systems are running, they have no radio to call for help and a very limited air supply. Even if they snag the scrubbers off the Lewis and Clark, they'll only have about 20 hours. Smith investigates the Clark's damage. Justin has been catatonic since coming through the portal, and DJ has no idea what's wrong with him. Cooper tries to explain that the drive went from liquid to solid, but Weir says that's impossible, as that would mean the drive was activated. The two argue until Miller shuts them up, and he demands to know what is in the core of the drive. The core is the portal itself, and when the three magnetic rings align, they create an artificial black hole. Traveling through this black hole is what allows the ship to essentially teleport, and Stark is wary of its dangerous potential. If Justin did go through the portal, it means he traveled to wherever the Event Horizon has been all this time, but Weir assures them that the portal can't just open on its own. Miller doesn't care to find out for sure and restricts everyone from entering this room, much to Weir's behest. Oh, and Weir is definitely seeing some shit. While Peters looks over Justin and searches the ship's log, she hears some fabric rustling in the distance. After confirming DJ isn't down there, she grabs a surgical saw and investigates. Oh fuck no. Peters, you get away from that tent right now. Oh look, it's your son, Denny, and his legs are all fucked up. Oh hey DJ. They watch the Event Horizon's final log where Captain Killpack and his crew prepare to launch the gravity drive. Killpack speaks some Latin before the sound and visuals get a little scary, but before Peters can try to adjust the visuals, the power starts to cut out. Weir suspects the failsafe circuits are malfunctioning and baby bear Justin starts convulsing. He tells DJ the dark is coming and Weir crawls through this circuit board maze over to the failsafe. He hears his wife calling to him again and the lights start getting ready for a jump scare.
Be with me. Forever.
Meanwhile, Miller watches as the gravity goo bursts into flames and this Frank Cotton looking motherfucker ascends out of it. DJ and Weir think the hallucinations are due to the carbon dioxide, but Miller and Peters don't think so. Smith gets angry at Weir, blaming him for breaking the laws of physics, and DJ restrains him at knife point. The crew calms him down and he lets Smith go, who immediately takes a swing at Weir. Miller shuts that shit down though, and sends Smith to repair the Clark. Stark tells Miller she thinks the undetermined life scans and hallucinations are connected, as if the Event Horizon has a life force of its own and the hallucinations are part of its immune system, trying to deal with them. Miller is not a fan of that idea. Peters is putzing around when unconscious-ass Justin disappears, and after some scary banging, some sparks send her running. The others didn't hear the banging, but they sure hear it now. Weir likes the banging and tries to open the door, but Stark puts a stop to that and he comes to his senses. They realize someone is in the airlock and the only person not accounted for is Justin, who is not wearing a suit. Miller heads their way from the outside and Peters tries to buy him time by talking to Justin. He says the dark from the other place is inside him and it is showing him horrible things. He says he won't go back there and he activates the outer door, which will open in 30 seconds. Justin suddenly comes to his senses though and begs to be let back inside, but it's too late for that. Miller tries to calm him down as his veins and eyes start pulsing and bursting, and as he's launched into space, Miller grabs him and jumps back inside. As they tend to his extensive wounds, Weir has more gravity drive visions. They put Justin into stasis and Stark estimates they have about 4 hours of air left. Miller wants to find out what happened to the original crew to prevent it from happening to them, and he pressures Weir for answers. But Weir has no idea where the ship has been all these years or why these strange things are happening. Miller starts hearing a voice calling for help, and as he tries to calm himself down, he has a grim vision of the things to come. Miller tells DJ about his experience, sharing that it was a former shipmate named Korik calling out to him. When their ship, the Goliath, malfunctioned, Korik didn't make it to the escape pod in time. He was slowly burnt to death by zero-gravity waves of fire as he begged for Miller to save him. He never told anyone about this story, but the Event Horizon somehow knew about it. He says the ship is getting inside of everyone's heads and projecting their darkest memories and fears, and DJ shares that he made an error when translating the Latin. It doesn't say save me, it actually says save yourself from hell. That's kind of a big difference there, DJ. He also believes the ship has been somewhere strange and it has brought back some kind of presence with it. Cooper is ready to repressurize the Clark and they find just a couple small gaps they need to cover before they can leave. Oh yeah, remember that video Peters was trying to decipher? Well, she got it, and well, it's not the most pleasant thing in the world. Miller says they are leaving, but Weir says they can't as their mission was to salvage as much of the ship as possible. Miller is like fuck no, and he plans on blowing the Event Horizon up from a safe distance. The core starts draining power from the ship though, and Weir says she won't allow them to leave as he slips into the darkness. Peters and Smith grab the remaining scrubbers from the scary room, but as Smith goes ahead, the drive beckons to her with visions of her son. She follows the visions up to some other part of the ship, and as she approaches Denny, she falls down a shaft to her death, right in front of the drive. Dr. Weir enters and finds her, but then envisions himself back in his quarters with Claire. He apologizes for not being there for her, and she flashes into a bathtub, where she proceeds to reenact her suicide. He's sobbing on the floor when Claire comforts him and tells him he'll never be alone again, and she has such sights to show him. Oh, Dr. Weir is ripping his own eyes out. Cooper tells Smith he's finished and will be back inside soon, but Smith notices Weir sneaking through the Clark. He updates Miller, who notices one of the explosives is missing, and he tells Smith to get off the Clark. Smith searches for the bomb instead of evacuating and finds it hidden inside his belongings. Oh, that sucks. The explosion destroys the Clark and sends Cooper flying, but he thinks on his feet and uses his air supply to propel towards the ship. Miller tells DJ what happened and to kill Weir if he sees him, but Weir got to him first. He tosses the dock around, and by the time Miller gets to medical, Weir has gone full Cenobite on him. This calls for a very big gun. Miller is searching the ship for Weir when he finds an unconscious Stark, who thankfully wakes up but is in pretty bad shape. Dr. Weir turns around in his evil captain's chair. He says the Event Horizon tore a hole in the universe, a gateway into another dimension, an evil dimension. She is no longer just a ship, she is alive. Weir sets the gravity drive to open in 10 minutes, and together they'll find out exactly where the Event Horizon has been for all of these years. Stark comes at Weir with some kind of canister, but he just tosses her to the side. Weir also has a spear gun now, and just as Cooper floats his way over to the ship, he blasts at him and Miller. This causes the room to depressurize, and Miller and Weir try to avoid being sucked out into space. Weir ends up losing his grip and goes flying out, but Miller manages to pull himself and Stark to safety just in the nick of time. An airlock alarm starts blaring, and the two arm themselves in case it's Weir. It's just Cooper though, but they only have 7 minutes to deactivate the gravity drive. Not knowing how to shut it down, they opt to blow up the bridge and separate from the drive before it goes. Miller goes to arm the explosives, Cooper goes to activate the emergency signal, and Stark goes to prep the gravity couches. Cooper gets the signal going, but soon finds himself surrounded by blood, and Stark seems to be having similar issues. They manage to reconvene, and Miller successfully sets the corridor to blow. Korik emerges out of nowhere and launches a stream of fire at Miller, forcing him to enter engineering for safety. But now the room is on fire, and Korik knocks him flying. The bloody goo puts out Miller's fire, and he tells the figure he can't be the real Korik, who reveals himself to be Weir in disguise, who is now super scarified. He tells Miller there is no hope in trying to destroy the ship, and soon he will experience what hell is truly like. He shows Miller a vision of his crew being eternally tortured, and the captain starts bonking him with an O2 scrubber. It's not very effective, and Weir starts whooping his ass. The drive sets up to open, and Miller begs Weir to take him and leave his crew, but he refuses. The gateway opens, and Miller sees more visions of his hellbound crew, but Weir doesn't notice him grab the detonator until it's too late. The bridge explodes and separates the two halves of the ship, and Stark and Cooper watch as the bad side is sucked into its artificial black hole. We jump ahead 72 days, and a new rescue ship is preparing to board the Event Horizon. They hop aboard and find the 3 survivors in stasis. Stark emerges from her tank only to find the rescue team is actually Weir, but looks like that was just a nightmare. Or was it? And that's Event Horizon. That was a lot of fun. I think I've just been fatigued from all of the Halloween movies, and I was just glad to be reviewing something really different, but I would have enjoyed it either way. Sci-fi horror just has a lot of room for experimentation and creativity, and Event Horizon definitely utilizes that. The hallucinations, the deaths, and the dialogue all work well to drive home this grandiose haunted house in space premise. The science of it all is explained a bit generically, but it's done well enough and vaguely enough to not bog down the script very much. It has so many visible influences in it, including obvious ones like Alien and Hellraiser, but also films like The Shining, The Amityville Horror, and Solaris. The anatomy of the ship borrowed from Gothic cathedrals, which really added to the hellish setting. The sets in general look great. I love the look of the gravity drive and the absurd magnetic tunnel leading to it. The 1997 CGI leaves a lot to be desired, but it isn't too distracting from the story. The practical effects look great though. I love Weir's final transformation. The story itself is a bit rough and undefined. It has the potential makings of a masterpiece, but it doesn't have the pacing to get there. I also think it doesn't quite live up to the horrifying visual feast it's sometimes advertised as. Obviously all the really rough stuff was cut, and I think adding a bit of it back would have benefited the movie. I don't blame any of those issues on Anderson or anyone involved in the production though, that's all on the producers. I did expect the ship to become more personified by the end or give us more of a glimpse into the dark world, but I'm mostly glad it didn't. While the horrifying visuals are great, this is definitely the sort of movie that thrives when the audience is able to use their own imaginations. All of the actors do a great job. Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne are the obvious standouts, but I was also really impressed by Jason Isaacs. But is it just me, or does he look like a perfect blend between Michael Fassbender and Michael Miguel Hatton from Game of Thrones? The plot dawdles at times, and it does take a long time for things to actually start going wrong on board, and I'm also wondering at what point the ship actually tapped into Weir. He seems to dream about himself there before the trip even begins, but that could be more foreshadowing for us than reality. I also question why certain characters had way more hallucinations than others. Most of the characters were affected, whether through hallucinations or abnormal anger, but I don't think Cooper had any issues right up until the end. I guess dude just had a good life with little trauma to feed on. Overall, Event Horizon was a pretty decent film. It has some great moments of really gruesome horror, as well as great moments of the creeping horror in the background. I don't think the finale lives up to the first 2/3 of the film, but if you're a fan of Hellraiser, From Beyond, or The Void, or anything like that, you should definitely check it out. I hope one day a proper director's cut can be released, but it doesn't seem likely. Thank you so much to my patron Jason for requesting Event Horizon for me to review, and remember, you too can request movies from me by joining my Patreon. I decided to treat myself next week and pick the movie I review, and I decided on Videodrome. Tune in next week to see if that thing gets monetized. Well, that's about it. Thank you all for joining me, and an extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and this has been Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my review of Event Horizon. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with my weekly horror videos. And if you want to help support the channel further, you should check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for future movies and franchises I cover on the channel. Thanks, y'all.